Hi everyone, this is Rachel from Rachel's Real Food Kitchen, and today I wanted to do a quick walkthrough on something called Azure Standard. So if you're not familiar with this or you're not quite sure how this works, then you're in for a treat. So Azure Standard is basically a food co-op option that allows you to get like healthy, organic food to your location, even if you don't have like a big health food store option, which I think most of us really don't. I live in an area where there's not really one for just it's a couple miles. I'm like it's about a 2 hour drive to get to a place like that. We're not necessarily there a lot. But this is a good option. It's kind of a mixture of multiple different stores in terms of what they offer, but they have a huge selection. They're based in the Pacific Northwest. And how these drops work is I'm going to show you here. I believe there's a standard. Yes, it's right here. So, how Azure Standard works is it works with the drop system. So, basically, what happens is you put your items in a cart, and then you select your drop. So they have a map here where you can find if there's a drop near you. And in most places in the US, there are a lot of drops available. Now, some areas you'll see some regions that are less populated or less common. You'll see don't have drops, but a lot of these other areas have gotten to the point where there's just enough people interested that there are a lot of local drops available. So, like, there are some of these areas, if you go up to Minnesota, for example, that depending on where you live, you could have 4 or 5 to choose from just in your regional area. So, that is available to you there. Once you select a drop, then you're going to have to select a date for that order. So the way Azure Standard Drops work is you order for that particular month. So they'll have a drop that month. So I'm filming this in the end of October. We just had our drop this last week delivery. So they'll have a deadline. So you place your order by that deadline to be able to be on that drop for the month. And then when you order, you're not necessarily going to know what day your order will arrive, the truck will arrive. They will give you the week of. So this last week, for instance, it's the 30th now. It would say whatever Monday's date was, the week of that time. It ended up being Wednesday for me this week. So what you will do is you will need to make sure that you're available to pick that up potentially, and it could be any time. It could be evening, could be afternoon, could be morning. It just kind of depends on where you live in relation to transportation and things like that a lot of times. But you'll find with Azure Standard that you will need to pick it up. That's the one downside with the drop system. You have to be available to actually pick it up or have somebody else who's available go and get your order for you. That happens a lot too. A lot of friends do it, family members, things like that. That's not a problem. It does happen, but just keep that in mind. So you place your order, select which drop you're going to order and in which month you want that drop order to be, and then you check it out. And then you wait. And it'll send you an email with the delivery once it ships that says, hey, it's going to be at this date and this time at this location. Now, when you first join a drop, you will probably get information from the drop coordinator. So the drop coordinator is the person in your local community or that nearby community that's in charge of the drop coordination process. He or she is the person that makes the decision about I say she, like that's who does my drop. She went to a local business here in town and said, hey, can we use your parking lot because you have to have a big space for the truck. And they gave her permission. They signed the paperwork. Azure Standard wanted to make sure that it was allowed. And then she coordinates. She gives people updates if it's going to be delayed. Or, if there's bad weather, she coordinates how we're going to handle it if it's like pouring buckets, like it almost was this week, for instance. So there's a lot of those different things involved with Azure Drops as well. So your coordinator should probably give you some information. Some coordinators communicate in different ways. Some choose emails, some choose Facebook groups, text threads, it just kind of depends. Some of them don't communicate that much. Others do communicate a lot. So just kind of play that around. And if you have any questions, you can always contact that coordinator. I believe this says usually, like here, if you click. A lot of these will have like questions or comments, and this is how you get there. So you'll see there's a drop shipping fee here, and that's a little bit newer, I believe. but you'll see the fees different. Most of these are community drops, so they don't have a fee, but they do have a shipping fee of this, which I have heard is a little bit. Let me check this real quick. I've heard that that varies based a little bit based on your location. That may not be true, however. That may have been a rumor that I heard. See, this is a drop shipping fee is free out here because they're located pretty near this location. You do have to pay the shipping fee based on where you're at. But you'll notice here there's a lot of really good information. You can see like who to contact and how you contact. One thing that you will notice about drops too is a lot of times they'll ask you to be there a little bit early, and that's because sometimes the truck can be there early. So just keep that in mind depending on where you live. So enough about the drops here. I'm going to walk you through how to actually do an order. So under shop, they have all sorts of products. Like this is way more than just food. So they have food. They have a lot of food. As you can see, a little bit of literally almost everything that you could want. They have health and beauty products, shampoos, soaps, things like that. Household and family, they have some things. They have some nutritional supplements. Outdoor and garden, they actually have some really interesting products in that category. They have canning jars. I've seen people buy live plants from there before. I've seen people buy some animal feed there before. And actually, somebody in my drop recently bought metal barrels. And so they were used at Azure, and Azure sells them as like an upcycling type program when there's room on the truck. And so that she wanted it, her and her husband were going to use it for like a water catchment system. And so that's why they were buying the barrels, and they were a really good price too. She told me how much she paid. They were pretty good. So that you just kind of got to look in here. I like using search a lot just because her catalog is a little bit overwhelming. But if you do need to familiarize, I would look through here some. It's going to take you a long time, but that'll give you an idea of what they have that you might use. When it comes to prices, I have noticed that it kind of depends on what items you are buying, what you're used to paying for them. For me, pantry items are a lot more inexpensive at Azure standard for what I'm buying than what I can buy anywhere locally. But that's not necessarily true for like meat products, so meat and poultry, for instance, because I live in an area where I have an abundance of farmers where I can go directly to and buy meat that way, either at a local market setting or direct to farmer. And so for me, the meat prices just aren't worth it for me. But the pantry and baking definitely are, and some of the frozen and grains and some other things like that. So you kind of got to just look around. What do you use? What's your circumstance locally? What can you get? What do you actually eat? What do you not care about? What are you willing to pay? And kind of play by ear for that. A lot of their products are organic, not all of them, but they do have pretty high standards. So I am a little more comfortable with some of the things that aren't necessarily certified organic, just because I know they are somewhat careful. You'll actually find some products in here which are known as transitional, especially in produce. This last year, they had transitional cherries. And so transitional cherries were cherries that are not certified organic, but they're in the process of becoming certified organic. So they were able to sell them as like, hey, they're not actively being treated with chemicals right now, but they also don't meet certified organic standards yet. And so they were able to sell them for a cheaper price than organic, and it's pretty much the same in terms of like what you care about is largely the same product. And so I saw so many people stock up on cherries because it was a really good price for a still very high quality product that can be hard to find in some areas. So you just kind of look in here and see what works well for you and your family, see what you like. Down here, I also wanted to point out under shop as well, there's actually some settings in here. New products, of course, things that are brand new. Sales. These are items that are on sale. For instance, there's a lot of potatoes on sale right now. I found produce tends to be pretty seasonal. A lot of times they'll put things on sale that need to kind of move, that you may get them and they may need to be processed quickly, which is usually fine. Sometimes it's just they have a lot and they need to move more of it too, for no particular reason. So just keep that in mind. They have a lot of seasonal type stuff. For produce in particular is very seasonal, so they have like pears and squash and things that they're trying to move because those are very seasonal items. But these are like 15, 20, 30% off. And then there's a category in here called clearance. Clearance was not here before, is basically like the scratch and dent bargain bin. So you'll see like random stuff in here. It'd be like bag torn and taped, 5% off, container dented, cans dented. These are like, I actually just bought some of these recently. I haven't opened them yet. But you can see this, for instance. Here's a really good example. They have a bargain bin. The best buy date was March. So this was 80% off. So it was like $1.13 for a pound bag. And I was like, I will try that and see. Of course, you're risking when it's short dated. But if you know your products and how because they're stored pretty well in the warehouse, you can kind of make an informed decision about why these things are. For instance, best buy date of 10/13. Those would be absolutely fine right now. So just keep that in mind when you're going through, but you can catch some really good deals in here. And sometimes they'll give warnings too that if you're not going to be able to use it. But see, there's all sorts of really cool stuff in here. Actually, they've added more since I last ordered. But anyway, I like a good deal, but make sure and check out that page as well. Once you shop, there also, if you were logged in, which I'm not right now, but once you're logged in and you've actually placed some orders, there will actually be something pop up here called products you've ordered. And it's a page that you can click and you can see at a glance what you have ordered previously. This is really handy if you want to check to see if anything's on sale or if there's something you order like very often, you can just go boom, boom, you're done. You don't have to go digging for it again. That page is really super duper helpful. They didn't used to have that page, now they do, and I love it. I love it. So anyway, that's how you do this. So let's just add a couple of these items to cart real quick so I can show you the cart. You can see like, okay, this has already gone out of stock since we looked. All right. And so then you can have like the weight. They'll show you like the weights and all of this stuff here. And I'm not logged in, so I can't show you because the login obviously has some personal information on it. But you receive Azure Standard Cash on some of these items, and the reason why is because it's like a rewards program. I don't really rank up that much, but if you're a big family and you're ordering a lot, you probably will. They actually have a category once you're logged in here, which I don't think it's showing here, but actually no, it is. Under shop where it's called bonus Azure Standard Cash. So these are things that like have 10 to 15 times the amount of cash if you order from it, which is pretty cool. There is an additional fee, and I don't know this off the top of my head, but there is an additional fee for small orders. So you'll want to make sure and order enough that makes sense for you. And then also just be mindful there is that 8.5%, at least where I'm at, shipping fee. So keep that in mind as well when you're calculating. The other thing to know is about payment. I wonder if there's a page here that will give me the most up-to-date information about that. So, frequently asked questions. All right, here's a frequently asked questions. They'll kind of give you like this. For orders under $50, a small $5 order fee is added for handling. There's billing information, shipping fees in some states, so you'll want to watch that as well. You'll see this is specific. There's a minimum order for a drop. That's something else that you'll notice your drop coordinator will watch. Here's a good thing. If you're missing a product, what you'll want to do is contact them for customer service. Now, I will say for Azure Standard, I have been very pleased with everything I've bought. I've only really had one thing. I mean, I've seen some other people have problems, and I've heard, there's been random shipments or things, whatever. But only problem I ever had was a bag of grain that I had bought, and it got busted on the truck and just like poured out everywhere. And so, of course, I couldn't got that. I contacted customer service right away. They either, I can't remember if it's been a while now, but they either like refunded or they applied a credit, whichever I wanted at the time. I think it might have changed, so keep that in mind. But I was very happy with it. You do have to, if something happens, you have to contact them within a certain period of time to qualify for like your replacement or refund or however they do it. But notice that as well. There's all sorts of information about here. There's also sources about product pricing and all that stuff. Sale price guarantees. One thing to keep in mind is a payment count pounds. And this was what I was trying to find. Because if you go to your checkout, you will see they do accept credit cards, but a 3% convenience fee has to be applied to rewards, debits, and credit cards. And the reason why is just because of payment processing. That's a fairly standard convenience fee. It's very normal. Your way around that, though, is to use ACH payment. So I actually have my bank account, and that's why I'm not showing you the inside of my account. But I actually have my bank account directly connected to my Azure Standard account so that it actually will pull the payment from my bank account instead of having to use a card and adding additional money to it. It's pretty easy to set up, just follow the instructions, but that is worth knowing. If you're a little uncomfortable with that, you can always use the card and pay the fee, but I would rather just do this because I am comfortable with it. They also do some with pre-approval for like cash and checks and money order and things if you want to. Um, and all of that stuff as well. So just keep in mind, like refunds are courtesy, but it's within 90 days. After 90 days, they're not eligible. There's all sorts of information about here as well, some shipping fees and everything. So just keep that in mind as well. But overall, I have been very pleased with Azure Standard. It's a good option for getting products that you can't buy other places. They have a lot of really quality food here. You could go broke shopping it, obviously, but it is a good place to get a lot of food depending on where you live. One thing that it also just kind of depends on how many people are eating too. Right now, it's just my husband and I, and so we don't need massive amounts of a lot of this stuff, nor do we really have space to store it at this point in our lives. But if I'm versus like people at our drop locations that are easily getting like they're getting items for months for 10 kids or whatever, like there's a lot of those. So yes, it comes out way ahead for those people. So it just kind of depends on how you do your grocery shopping, where you live, what you eat, all that stuff. But that's kind of the breakdown of Azure Standard. I hope that helps.